Welcome, guys. Welcome back into my channel. This is Trev from Trevessence, and today we are going to be continuing the reading of the book Grace Under Fire, written by the lovely Julie Garwood. For those of you who have been following me as we've been reading this book over the last we've been reading it for the last few months. I think we stopped reading it in around beginning of May, end of April, somewhere there. We hadn't read it for a few for a few weeks. But now we are back on track and we are going to finish reading this book because we have several other books that's waiting in the wings for us to finish reading. And so we're just going to get to it. All right, guys? So come on with me. Come on with me. Join me every morning when I read. We read the Bible and we read our book, whichever book it is. We're like halfway in this book, and in the next week or so we should be finished reading it and moving on to another book. I have like three other books here waiting in the wings to be read. Not just these three, I have several others, but these three are priority. So we are going to be trying to finish reading these within the next month or so. So let us begin. Yesterday, we read up to chapter 16. We read about Isabel. Isabel is starting her musical career. She has been discovered through YouTube. She has been discovered by EXO, and EXO is a very famous singer. And Isabel is starting to perform with EXO on stage. And this is the beginning of her career as a singer. She's very nervous. She's very anxious. She doesn't do well with crowds. She doesn't do well in the spotlight. But EXO is sort of breaking her in, and her in-laws, her sister's husband's family are being very supportive and very encouraging, and they are helping her to get rid of the jitters and giving her all the support she needs. So we are going to continue reading to find out how this turns out for Isabel. And don't forget that Isabel is also planning a trip to Scotland because her great uncle has died in Scotland and left some inheritance for her. And she's going over there to claim this inheritance. So let us continue reading. We are on to chapter 17. Isabel blew them away and left them begging for more. That's the audience they're talking about. She has just done a performance here in chapter 16. So now on to chapter 17. Isabel blew them away and left them begging for more. Isabel knew she was going to be wonderful, but even Xavier knew she was going to be wonderful, but even he was astounded by the crowd's wild reaction to hearing them sing together. Just as they had practiced, she sang her song and another song with him, and then, with a smile and a wave, she left the stage. Xavier had asked her to stay by the entrance until he finished the performance, and she happily agreed. Michael stood behind her, and she leaned back against him. Until now, Isabel's nerves had been coiled tight, and she was finally able to let go. Belief that she had gotten through the ordeal without a blunder made her all but euphoric. It was finally over. Or so she thought. But Xavier had another little surprise in store for her. After he finished singing what Isabel assumed was his last song for the night, he crooked his finger at her and called her name. She quickly strode back on stage, believing that the two of them would take a bow together. When the cheering died down, he asked Isabel if she knew the lyrics to one of his favorite songs. It was called Wanting You. Of course, she answered. I imagine everyone here knows the lyrics. I love that song. Again, the audience cheered and clapped. Let's sing it together. What? Now? You want me to sing it now? Her heart felt as though it were about to stop. The crowd began to chant her name louder and louder until she finally agreed. Yes, okay. She moved closer to him and whispered, I'm going to get you for this. Isabel, love, my mic is on. She groaned, and the crowd roared their approval as a mic stand was placed in front of her. It was bedlam until Xavier raised his hand to quiet them down. He began to sing, and she quickly joined in. To the audience, the way they looked at each other was like two lovers about to come together. When they finished the tender ballad, the crowd jumped to their feet, cheering wildly. Xavier smiled at her, then leaned down and kissed her. He didn't linger, but the kiss was long enough to cause to cause a near riot. Even me, I'm stunned like I am the one who got the kiss. I didn't see that coming at all. He laughed when he saw that she was blushing. He waved to the audience, took Isabel's hand, and the two of them walked off the stage together. Now, I wonder how Michael is feeling about this, because remember, Michael is kissing her, petting her, and stuff, and she's liking it, and she's liking him. So I wonder how he's feeling seeing all of this. Let's continue. The next hour was a flurry of activities. Laurent, Reagan, Jordan, Kate, and Michelle, along with their husbands, were escorted to Xavier's suite. Nick had a good laugh when his wife became tongue-tied while shaking Xavier's hand. Noah and Michael stood watching from across the room. Nick joined them. You are not at all jealous, Michael asked him. Hell no, she's in my bed, not his. You didn't like it when Xavier kissed Isabel, Noah remarked to Michael, and before you ask, it was the look on his face. Yeah, how'd I look? Michael asked. He couldn't help the hostility. He couldn't keep the hostility out of his voice, which, of course, didn't faze Noah. Like you wanted to punch him. That's exactly what I wanted to do. And hell if I know why, Michael admitted. Hey, Nick, Noah said. Yes. When did your brother become so clueless? Nick grinned. He hasn't been himself since he let Isabel drive him home. Michael ignored their ribbing. He shook his head, then said, We have taken enough of Xavier's time, and Isabel looks tired. The throng of people around Isabel finally dwindled, and she was talking to Emerson, the agent, when Xavier interrupted. He took Isabel aside and talked to her for several minutes, then walked with her to the door. You've got the schedule. I'll see you when you get back. Michael nudged Isabel out into the hallway before Xavier could kiss her goodbye. Nick and Noah followed. There were only two of Xavier's guards outside the door. Isabel looked around and asked, Where did Kate and the others go? Michael answered her, Jax is driving them back to the Hamilton. Are they all coming up to the suite before they go home? No, Nick answered. Oh, good. Too late, she realized she had said the thought out loud and rushed to explain. I'm sorry. It's just that it's been so loud and chaotic. Isabel, you don't need to apologize, Michael told her. Okay, she said. How are we getting back to the hotel? We've got that covered, Noah said. Let's go. Nick and Noah started down the hallway with Michael and Isabel behind them. They hadn't gotten far when she stopped. My garment bag! We forgot it! It's in Xavier's suite. The closet. They backtracked and waited until one of the guards carried out the bag and handed it to Noah. Want to try this again? Nick asked. Okay, but I'm telling you, we are never going to find a way out of here. It's a maze, Isabel said. Nick and Noah knew what they were doing, and it didn't take long to reach the back entrance. Here we go. Nick had to shout because the noise came from outside. Coming from outside was ear piercing. They're waiting for Xavier, she insisted. They're calling your name too, Noah said. As soon as they stepped outside, the screaming intensified. The barricade couldn't hold the fans back, and they ran to Isabel. She waved to them, but she didn't dare stop. There were so many. Had she been alone, it would have been scary. She didn't think they meant her any harm, but their enthusiasm could mow her down. With one arm around her and the other extended to ward off the crowd, Michael wouldn't let anyone get close to her. She felt like a football tugged in a, tucked in his arm as they hurried to the car park, parked in a no parking zone. A policeman had his pad out and appeared to be writing a ticket. When he spotted Noah, he nodded and hurried to open the doors. The four of them were in the car and on their way in seconds. Isabel could finally let go of some of the tension she had been holding on to all night. She was thankful that it was over. That was a hell of a thing you did tonight, Isabel, Nick said. He turned in his seat and looked at her and noticed how she leaned into Michael. Now you're a superstar, Noah said. Oh God, I hope not. She had sounded so appalled. Noah and Nick both laughed. It will get easier, Nick said. Just look at Xavier. He's at the top of the world tonight. He was at the top of his music, and he couldn't be any more laid back. He has had a lot of practice with crowds. I looked at his bio. He's been doing this since he was a teenager in Ireland. The guy's got a superpower, Nick said. How's that? Noah asked. He raises his hand and the crowd quiets down. Think I could learn how to do that with Samantha and Tommy? That's his wife and his son he's talking about. Nick got Nick got a call from the concierge at the Hamilton, ending the discussion. He was only on the phone for a minute. There was reporters with cameras in front of the hotel. They don't know where Xavier is staying, so they are covering the five-star hotels, hoping to get a shot at him. You know that's all the paparazzis do, and the media. We are going up in the service elevator, Nick said. Isabel was impressed with how organized Nick and Noah were, and their steady self assurance was a relief. The pressure was finally loosening its grip when it suddenly dawned on her that they should have reached the hotel by now. She looked out the window and didn't recognize any streets. Where are we going? She asked. Michael answered, We are taking the scenic route back. Are they still following us? He asked Noah. I think I've lost them, Noah answered. Just want to be sure. 20 minutes later, after a meandering route through Boston streets, Isabel was back in her suite. You can relax now, Noah told her. No one gets on the elevators without showing a room card. Both he and Noah took off their ties and stuffed them into the pockets of their jacket suits before heading to the bar refrigerator for a beer. Nick tossed one to Michael, who had already taken off his jacket and hung it in the closet. He grabbed his gym bag and dropped it in the chair by the bedroom door. Then he uncapped his beer and took a long drink. Ready to take a breather, Noah and Mike sprawled out in the chairs, and Michael leaned against the bar. It wasn't until then that Isabel drew their attention. After circling the room several times, she went to the sofa, sat, and then jumped right back up. I'm so happy it's over. I think it went well. Didn't it go well? Maybe it went well. Does it matter now? It's over, thank goodness. Did Kate have a good time? I hope so. My sister works hard. She was talking so fast, her words were tripping over one another. Michael looked at Nick and said, Treadmill. Treadmill? What does that mean? Nick asked. Isabel doesn't give Michael time to explain, but continued rambling. Did you see how happy Laurent was when she shook Xavier's hand? I can't believe I'm not tired. I should be exhausted, but I'm not. I've got an abundance of energy. An abundance? Michael said. That means a lot, Michael, Nick explains. He shot his brother an annoyed glance. I know what it means. Isabel paced in front of the chair with the gym bag and stopped. Why do you have your bag with you? She asked. He answered with a question. Are you going to stay here tonight? Yes, I am. Then I'm staying with you. I'll sleep out here on the sofa. Why are you staying? She asked. Because I know what's going to happen. In the middle of the night, you are going to want to go to the fitness center and get on the treadmill, aren't you? She decided to admit the truth. I might. Oh, treadmill, Nick said, finally understanding. Has she done this before? Get up in the middle of the night? Noah began. She tried. I just didn't let her. Isabel started speed talking again. She bounced from one thought to another. Nick, when are you going to get my flash drive back from your technician? I promised Xavier I would put my songs together soon on it. Thank God I don't have to sing in front of a huge crowd like that again. Promise me none of you will ask me to sing at the party tomorrow night. Okay. She didn't give them time to agree. I'm just so happy I didn't mess up. I didn't, did I? Since she was looking at Michael, he answered, no, you didn't mess up. Her smile was radiant. She looked like she had just given her the highest praise ever. Would you like something to drink, Isabel? Nick asked when he could get a word in. She went to Michael and took a beer. No, thank you, she said. She took a drink and then handed the bottle back. What you're experiencing is a surge of adrenaline, Isabel, Noah told her. Nick nodded in agreement. In a little while, you're going to crash. Then you'll be able to sleep. Turning to Michael, he said, I think it's a good idea for you to stick around. We should get going. Yeah, you should, Michael told them. Just as Noah was about to stand, Michael said, no, 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 wait, wait. Stay until I get out of the shower. She might take off while I'm in there. He picked up his bag and had his hand on the bedroom doorknob, but turned when Isabel began to protest. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. I am. She stopped arguing because he disappeared into the bedroom and shut the door. She looked at Nick and said, that was rude, wasn't it? Yes, it was rude. Some of the fans tonight were overly enthusiastic, but I don't think any of them were rude. They were just excited, right? Weren't they excited? Once again, she didn't give them time to answer. I'll admit, I would have been scared if Michael and you two weren't there. They could have rolled over me. They'd push like they did when we were hurrying to the car. I don't believe I could push that many people out of my way. She shivered, picturing the mob scene, and whispered, I just never expected anything like that. Thank God you were with me. It's over now, Isabel, Noah said. His voice was kind and soothing. She nodded. She sat on the sofa again, her hands at her sides. Did you have a nice time tonight? Thinking she would keep talking, neither one answered her for several seconds. But when she looked at them expectantly, Noah said, yes, it was fun tonight. I like Xavier. She smiled. I like him too. Nick frowned. How much do you like him? What's that supposed to mean? You either like someone or you don't. I do like him. That's all there is to it. I like a lot of people. Noah, blunt as always, asked, what about Michael? Do you like him? Sometimes. Noah and Nick exchanged a look as though they found her answer quite amusing. AG is in the house, and with AG having rolled into the house, AG, who disappear? Black Mango. Michael disappear, Black Mango? All right, so AG is in this live, so we are moving over to AG. AG is going to be the one getting watch hours on this reading. AG Born Jamaican. AG, how you doing? Stay safe on those streets, my brother. Let me see where AG, the AG. AG Born Jamaica, AG playlist. AG Food Chronicles. Oh no, watch out, follow them there already. All right, I have run all of that. Let me see if there's another Let me see. AG Born Jamaica. There's another playlist that I haven't run yet. Garden Chronicles. I run all the Garden Chronicles already. AG. Let's see. There's another one that I haven't run. Yes. Hurry up, you work, 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 work. All right, this one. All right, we're gonna run this one. So AG getting a run right. This one that is for you, AG. So come on into the live, guys. Once you all come into the live, you all know if you're a content creator, you comment in the live, you get watch hours as long as this live lasts, and and sometimes even afterwards. Because if I'm doing something, I just leave the lives running. Because if I'm not using the devices, like what's the point? Let it run so people can get a little coin here and there. All right, let us continue. Let us continue. We are on to right here. All right. Well, wait, Noah said. Now that she had quieted down, Nick answered one of her earlier questions about your flash drive. I was promised I'll get it back Monday or Tuesday. Thank you. Are you going home tonight, Nick? Is Laurent home with the children? Samantha and Tommy spent most of the day and early evening on the island with their parents. They are back home now with the nanny. Tomorrow's a busy day for them. Sam has a play date and a birthday party to attend, and Tommy has a clean house he's trying to destroy. Noah laughed. He is not even 2 years old yet, and already giving you fits? I love that kid. The talk turned to the McAllisters. After the party tomorrow, no matter how late it is, you know they're going to want to play poker. Noah said, are you in? Sure. Are you? I wouldn't miss it. Until Jordan drags you to bed, Nick said. I like it when my wife drags me to bed. He grinned after making that comment. They continued talking about the relatives until the bedroom door opened and Michael walked out. He was barefoot and wore a white t-shirt and gym shorts. His hair was still wet. Okay, Isabel, it's your turn, he said. Are you sure you don't want to go back to the island tonight, Isabel? Nick asked. We'll help you pack up. She shook her head. I want to wind down, and this is the perfect place. It's quiet, and I can order room service. She thanked them for taking such good care of her tonight, and then walked into the bedroom to get ready for bed. She paused at the doors, turned back, and said, please take Michael with you. I'm fine, and I really want to be alone. So here Michael is being overprotective of Isabel. Isabel isn't having it tonight. I think she's having the jitters about whether or not she should choose Michael or Xavier. They are both showing great interest in her. Thanking them once again, she closed the door. She spent a long time in the shower. She had to wash her hair again because of all the product the stylist had insisted on putting in it. By the time she dried her hair and put on moisturizer, she was wiped out. She went into the bedroom, opened the room service menu, and sat on the side of the bed, flipping through the pages of the menu to find something she wanted to eat. Finally, coming to the conclusion that she wasn't really hungry after all, she turned down the comforter but didn't get into bed. The tension of the day had left her drained, and all she could do was stare into space. She was still sitting there in the silent stupor when Michael walked into the bedroom. Adrenaline was suddenly flowing through her veins again. It didn't matter what he was wearing, a business suit or shorts and a t-shirt. He was one fine-looking man. He was also a pain in her backside, she reminded herself. Why are you still here? Ignoring her question, he said, let me get that bandage off your arm. It's wet. Michael sat down beside her, so close his thigh rubbed against hers, and it was almost impossible to concentrate on what he was doing. After several attempts, he finally got the bandage off and tossed it in the trash. The pad that had covered the stitches kept them dry. How does this look? She asked. She was so close to him, she could feel his heat. Ouch! It's healing, he answered. Michael told himself to get up, and yet he couldn't make himself move. He desperately wanted to lose himself in her. He desperately wanted to lose himself in her. He needed to think about something else, anything else. And then he noticed she was holding a leather binder open to the room service menu. Did you want to order something to eat? I don't know. Do you? They stared at each other for a long minute without saying a word. The silence was heavy with anticipation. She stood, thinking she should shoo him out of the room and get into bed and try to sleep. It wasn't what she really wanted to do, though. Since Michael had walked into the police station, she had this indescribable need to be with him, and she simply didn't want to resist it any longer. She knew it was crazy and that a relationship with Michael would never go anywhere. But right this minute, she didn't care about consequences or being reasonable, and she wasn't going to worry about what she would do if he rejected her. Whatever happened tonight, she was a big girl and she could handle it. Go, Isabel, go, Isabel. You've been putting this off for a long time, Isabel. Come on now, be a big girl. It's been a long day. You should get some sleep, Michael said, reaching over to turn off the bedside lamp. He was about to force himself to get up when she sat down on his lap, put her arms around his neck, and rested against him. Her head was tucked under his chin, and he could feel her heartbeat. What are you doing? Get off of me, Isabel. I will, in a minute, she said. She decided to make up an excuse so she could hug him a while longer. I'm cold and you are nice and warm, she said. He wrapped his arms around her and pulled her tight against him while he again ordered her to get the hell off of him. His actions contradicted his demand, but he wanted her too much to care. What was the harm of holding her for a few minutes? He was comforting her after her long, stressful day and evening. Yeah, yeah, that was it. He let out a long sigh. Comfort my ass. Oh my God, that's some kind of comfort there. OMG. I'm like a kid in a candy store when I'm reading a book with all these little lovey-dovey stuff. It's like reminding me when I was a kid and reading all those, reading what I used to read when I was a kid, Harley Quinn, and I forget that series of books I used to read. Oh my God. But anywho, let us continue. Chapter 18, guys. We're reading here for an hour. An hour is enough for the day. Michael began stroking her back, and it felt wonderful. Isabel closed her eyes and let thoughts ramble through her mind. She wondered how she would react if she told him she was determined never to fall in love with him. He was too dangerous. He'd probably jump with joy, she imagined, for he definitely wasn't into personal commitment now. He had too many new careers to conquer, and settling down would be the last thing on his mind. She wasn't sure she wasn't sure she ever wanted to settle down either. She had too much to do and see, and if she ever changed her mind, she would choose someone who would love her passionately and be true to her. Someone just like Judge Buchanan. The way he looked at his wife after all these years together with such love. Yes, that's what she wanted eventually. It was lust controlling her now. There were two consenting adults, and she wanted to know what it would feel like to give in to her desires. Come on, Isabel, just be a Nike and just do it. Was that a sin To give in to temptation? She couldn't seem to care if it was. What are you thinking, Isabel? Michael asked. She had become tense in his arms. That I'd like you to kiss me. She leaned back, looked deeply into his eyes, and that was all it took. His hand went to the back of her neck, and his mouth came down on top of hers in a squirting kiss that let her know how much he wanted her. His tongue rubbed against hers, teasing a response. The kiss was wet, wild, and incredibly hot. She had the softest lips and they tasted so good. He couldn't seem to get fast enough. One kiss and intense desire he had never experienced before knifed through him. Isabel wasn't passive. Her tongue was every bit as wild as his. Her fingers threaded through his hair, and she let out a low groan when he ended the kiss. She wanted another and another. The bedroom was cast in shadows, the only light spilling in from the living room French doors, the only sound that of their harsh breathing. She never wanted him to let go. He kissed her again, a long, slow kiss that made every nerve in her body tingle. She couldn't stop caressing him. Her hand slowly slid across his shoulders and upper arms. She could feel his muscles under his skin. There was such power and strength in him, and yet he was so gentle with her. Leaning in, she kissed the side of his neck. She was suddenly feeling shy and vulnerable, but was determined to make her intentions clear. Her voice quivered when she said, I want you, Michael. There was a hint of amusement in his reply. There was a hint of amusement in his reply. I know. His arrogance didn't bother her at this time. Do you want me? Yeah, I do. She quit hiding from him and leaned back, trailing her fingertips down his cheek. She looked into his eyes and said, Remember, sex is just a pleasurable activity tonight. Oh my God! Oh God! Had he really said that? He couldn't come up with anything better? Oh my God! Michael was frowning, and Isabel wasn't sure he understood what she was telling him. Should she remind him? The first time they were in the hotel together, he had told her that a man didn't need to like a woman to take her to bed. And he did say that very matter of factly that sex was just a pleasurable activity, sometimes an extremely pleasurable activity. She didn't want him to feel guilty or have regrets tomorrow, though. In truth, she doubted he would. Isabel decided she didn't want to go into a long explanation now. If he didn't recall the conversation, that was on him. Sex is just a pleasurable activity, she repeated. Michael could hear the tremor in her voice, and he could see how tense she was, though she was obviously trying to hide her insecurities. He knew she wasn't scared. He wouldn't touch her if she was. She was just a little nervous. But then, so was he. He had fought for so long not to touch her, but lately it was all he could think about. And now that it was finally happening, he didn't want to overwhelm her. If he went, if he went, if he went at the if he went at the warp speed he wanted to, they'd already be done the first time. He had Winsome, what's up? Winsome me I get tongue tied. He had made love to her all night long if she'd let him. Isabel made him feel whole again. It was the only way he could explain it. It would be all over for him if he didn't pace himself. He kept picturing all the ways he wanted to make love to her, and though he tried, he couldn't block the image of her naked body writhing beneath him. Yeah, he had it bad. thanks to his wild, undisciplined thoughts. Then it came to him. He had get her talking, and come to heaven or hell, he had forced himself to listen. Isabel? Yes. Are you going to show me how incredible you are in bed? Uh-oh. Oh, God, she groaned. She had forgotten all about her outrageous boast that, while he was busy training to become a lawyer, then a Navy SEAL, and only God knows what else, she was perfecting the art of seduction. It had been a silly lie. Did he actually believe her? Of course not. She could see the mischief in his eyes and knew he was teasing her. He lifted her off his lap, and she stood between his legs, facing him. She watched as he pulled his t-shirt over his head and tossed it aside. The sprinkle of dark, curly hair on his chest tapered at his navel. She wanted to kiss every inch of him. Okay, okay. Isabel had a sexy ass thin body, and Michael was about to tell her so. But then she removed her top, and he lost every thought in his head. Never taking her eyes off his, she slowly slid her pajama shorts down over her hips and let them drop to the floor. Michael forgot how to breathe. She was perfect. It seemed that all he had to do was look at her or think about her, and he became aroused. She had that much power over him, and he wasn't fighting it any longer. Her boldness pleased him. He reached out to caress her breast, marveling at how soft and smooth her skin was, and then he slowly trailed his fingers down to her hips, smiling over the goosebumps he caused her. Ah! He lifted her away from him so he could stand, then quickly stripped out of the rest of his clothes. Michael pulled the sheets back, then turned to her. She moved into his arms, squeezing her eyes shut in absolute bliss because his body felt so good against hers. He kissed her again, this time long and hard, and fell into bed with her. He rolled her onto her back, then stretched out on top of her, bracing his weight with his arms. He nudged her knees apart. He nudged her knees apart so that his pelvis could press against hers. His groan was loud and freeing. God, you feel good, she sighed. So do you, Michael. With some said, Trevor, read this morning. Yes, with some. We read this morning a little bit late because we start reading about 7 o'clock. Or later than that, maybe about 7:30. Maybe later than that too. Maybe a little bit before 8 we started reading. Yeah, but we did read this morning. We read for an hour, and then we are reading this for an hour, and then it's going to be everything else goes. We're gonna do other things today. Yeah, Unaga help me. Unaga help me today. Me I go yeah, me I go do live, go upstairs, go to live and continue folding up and putting out and all of these things. I've done quite a bit already, but you all are going to help me do the rest. Yeah, because when I'm on the live with you all and working in the house, and I'm surprised at how much I accomplish. As opposed to when I'm here by myself. When I'm here by myself, me sit down, me get up, me do this, me do that, me do the other, me do the third. But when I am with you all on the live, I get so much done. Let's continue reading. And when we did reach, where did I reach? Me I'll forget where me did reach. Right here, so. Once the two of them said they feel good. Let's read that part again. He nudged their knees apart so that his pelvis could press against hers. His groan was loud and free. God, you feel good. She sighed. So do you. Wanting to make their coming together perfect, he forced himself to take his time. Her breasts were pressed against his chest, and every time she moved at all, her pelvis rubbed against him. Taking his time was the most difficult thing. he had ever done, but he was determined. She moved again, and the pleasure she gave him was so intense he clenched his jaw. He could feel his composure disintegrating. Overwhelmed now, he made love to her with his mouth, his tongue mating with hers, sliding in and out while his hands caressed her breast. Isabel had no idea how sensitive her breasts were until he kissed them and stroked them with his tongue. He slowly moved down her body, teasing and tormenting her. He kissed the valley between her breasts, then her navel, then moved lower between her thighs. She nearly came off the bed. She nearly came off the bed when he touched her so intimately. She tried to get him to stop. The pleasure was so exquisite, it scared her. Yet, at the same time, she clung to him and demanded more. His tongue was magical. Her lips moved against him, and her moans told him how much she loved what he was doing to her. When it was Isabel's turn, the pleasure she gave him shattered Michael's control. She was a little awkward, and that made it all the better. He couldn't let her torment him for long. He pulled away long enough to get protection, and when he returned, he reached for her and rolled her on her back again, rougher now with his need to be inside her. He knew she was ready for him. He wasn't gentle as he pushed her thighs apart. His mouth covered hers as he lifted her lips and thrust inside her. Ah! He didn't expect her to be this tight, this hot, this perfect. What is me I read, Jesus? What is me I read? I make me all sweat. What is? Holy moly! She cried out when he entered her, and he immediately stopped until she arched up against him. Isabel, am I hurting you? He was panting, and his voice was harsh. Please, please, don't stop. Her nails dug into his shoulders again, a demand to move. It was all the encouragement he needed. He couldn't take his time now. His thrusts were deep. He withdrew and thrust deep again. She moaned with pleasure, begging him with whispered words that didn't make any sense. Passion controlled them both, and when he felt her tighten around him and whispered his name, he knew she was about to come apart. Oh my God! Let it happen, love. Let's go. I'll keep you safe. Isabel had never had a climax before, and when she was feeling scared, and what she was feeling scared her because she had no control over it. But when Michael promised to keep her safe, she stopped fighting and let the euphoria overtake her. Her orgasm consumed her, and it was the most exhilarating and frightening thing she had ever experienced. She felt as though she were flying among the stars and ever so slowly floating back into Michael's strong arms. What is? He was there with her, climaxing while she was in the throes of her orgasm. She shouted his name and squeezed him inside her. Eh, eh. He whispered her name, then groaned low in his throat and tightened his arms around her, pulling her up against him as wave after wave of ecstasy consumed him. His release was pure rapture, and it was all because he was with Isabel. His head dropped down in the crook of her neck, his breathing harsh against her ear. He noticed that she was having as much trouble recovering as he was, and that made him extraordinarily pleased. When Sam, you finally wake up, Trev, it bring back memories to you. Yeah, that when some love me. When some when some when some please to love me. Please to leave me alone. I didn't even expect the book to go. This no wonder they name it Grace Under Fire because really she was under some fire just now. Oh, LG, let me continue reading. Their bodies were slick with perspiration. Michael was so content. He never wanted to move. But then he knew once he got his strength back, he would make love to her again. With Isabel, he was insatiable. What the holy? Those were the first words Isabel wanted to shout, but she thought she caught herself in time. She was still reeling. It's called an orgasm, sweetheart. Oops! So much for being sophisticated about it all. She shivered when he kissed the side of her neck. Then he rolled to his side, got out of bed, and went into the bathroom. Isabel was shocked how her body was trembling and reached for the chair to cover up. Was it the aftermath of what she had just experienced? She took a deep breath and slowly let it out. Having sex with Michael was the most amazing thing. When some get all the sleep and we not get none. It didn't take any time at all to want him again. Good God! Michael had the power to turn her into a sex maniac, but only with him she qualified. She couldn't imagine being this free and letting any other man touch her the way Michael did. What was the protocol after sex? What should they talk about? Or should they not talk at all and just pretend to go to sleep? No, of course not, she decided. They were adults. She knew Michael was going to be very laid back about it all. He had probably been having sex since he hit puberty. He was a pro, though she doubted he would want to hear that. He certainly had perfected his technique. He had her melting as soon as he touched her. By now, he knew how inexperienced she was, and she hoped he didn't say anything about it. She knew she had pleased him, the way he held her and called her name, and all the nonsensical words he whispered into her ear told her so. She wondered if he said those words to other women he had taken to his bed. She blocked the thought. She didn't want to think about the other women now. She was still feeling wonderful and didn't want to move. Closing her eyes, she let her mind wander. It had been an amazing day. Her thoughts drifted to the concerts tonight and how incredible Xavier had been. Talk about charisma. The man had an abundance. Xavier had loads of personal charm. Until tonight, she hadn't thought Michael had any charm at all. But then she saw him talking to Xavier and some of his staff, and he had been quite charming and pleasant. What a revelation that had been! Her mind then went to the crowd and the craziness outside, and how it took three strong men and a carefully thought out plan to get away safely. The screaming got to her, she admitted. Had she been alone, she would have been terrified. Michael returned and walked into the living room to get her cell phone from his jacket pocket. He put it on the charger and then got back into bed beside her. How come you're frowning? He asked as he pulled her into his arms. What are you thinking about? He wasn't prepared for her answer. I was thinking I never want to do that again. She stunned him. She stunned him speechless. The condition didn't last long. What the hell, Isabel? I know you had at least one orgasm. You you came apart in my arms and you were yelling my name. If I hadn't been in such a hurry, you would have had two, maybe three or more. In fact, I'm going to make sure. He stopped ranting at her when she put her mouth over his mouth. When she put her hand over his mouth. I was talking about the concert, she explained. He looked so upset she didn't dare laugh. I was thinking about it, and I made up my mind I'm never going to do that again. Even though Xavier made it easy, I still hated being on stage. As for the other, she deliberately left him hanging. Yes, yes, he demanded. And before she could answer, He said, "Stop toying with me." "It was nice, Michael, very nice," she whispered. The impish, the impish twinkle in her eyes, the impish twinkle in her eyes encouraged him. "Next time I'll do better than nice," he promised. He began to nuzzle the side of her neck. Every time he got near her, he got harder. It was her smile and her ask, "Isabel, hmm? Guess what next time is?" He gently nudged her on her back, then stretched out on top of her, lifting up on his elbows. He stared into her eyes while he waited for her answer. She traced his lower lips with the tips of her tongue and whispered, "Now?" A second before his mouth covered hers. By the time he ended the kiss, she was begging him not to stop. "You're going to love this," he promised. The man was nothing if not truthful. She could barely keep her arms around his waist when he finally gave in to his own need and thrust inside her. Lord Jesus, too much of this, man, too much of this. Though it didn't seem possible, she climaxed again when he did. Sure, though it didn't seem when he did. Could making love kill her? With Michael, it just might, she thought. He turned her and pulled her close, her head on his chest, as he gently stroked her back. Even though there weren't any sweet, loving words, his caresses were enough. Isabel considered herself a realist. She knew that down the road, if she ended up with a broken heart, it wouldn't be anyone's fault but her own. She didn't want to think about the future now. She wanted to savor every minute of the night with Michael. She tried to get out of bed to get something to drink, but Michael wouldn't let her move. He got both of them bottles of Coke. He even poured hers into a glass with ice. Like a man who had just taken a brisk walk through the desert, he guzzled his drink, and when it was empty, he drank most of hers. Most of hers. "Oh, that's lovely," she said. There was less than a sip left in the glass. His response was to laugh. He got her another Coke, then sat back against the headboard, looking perfectly content to be stark naked. He was such a distraction, he couldn't concentrate on what he was telling her, so she pulled the sheet up. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" She scooted up and sat next to him, leaning into his side. "I said your cell phone is charging," he repeated. "Thank you. The son of a bitch called you 3 times while you were on stage." "Which particular son of a bitch are you referring to?" she asked sweetly. "James Reed," he said. "I let the calls go to voicemail. His sales pitch is turning into harassment, and much he must be getting a big commission. Now, this James Reed is the guy who wants to purchase the land that Isabel is inheriting in Scotland. And he's calling her incessantly, wanting her to to sell him the land. Want me to talk to him? No, 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 I can handle it. Tell me about this land you are going to inherit. Why would I do that? You don't share anything personal with me." He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Baby, I just shared my whole body with you." Oh my God. Can't get any more personal than that. He had her there. You know what I mean. You always close upon me whenever I ask anything about your personal life. He didn't argue. "What do you want to know?" "How did you get those 3 bullets in your back?" "I was shot 3 times." He was being flippant, but she wasn't going to push him. If he didn't want to tell her, she would let it go. He was proving her point, though. He closed up whenever she asked anything personal. "It's like talking to a tree stump," she remarked on a sigh. He laughed. Another minute passed, and then he said, "I was on a mission. That's when I got shot. Navy SEALs." "Yes, you were in Afghanistan? And before you ask, I heard your father talking to you. What else did you hear?" "That's all." "I know you can't and won't talk about your time as a Navy SEAL. That's a code, isn't it? You only talk to your other teammates about your missions, but but no one else. No, no one outside the SEALs. Oh, that's right. Were your interests the reason you didn't stay in the SEALs? No, not at all. The mission was my last. My tour was over, and I didn't re-up. You could have died, she whispered, a tinge of fear in her voice. He nodded. I was lucky. Michael could see that Isabel wanted more of him, but he couldn't give it. I bet he was drained. He was drained. The details of the mission were in a classified file, and that's where they would stay for the time being, or at least until the Navy released them. But the memories from that day would be with him as long as he lived. The team had been sent into a village that was nothing more than a tiny dot on the map of Afghanistan. A band of insurgents had swarmed into the area and set up camp. By the time the SEALs arrived, almost half of the inhabitants had been slaughtered, including women and children. Michael would never forget the horrific scenes when they arrived. Carnage and bloodshed everywhere. Innocents gunned down where they stood. The town was eerily quiet as the team went from house to house, searching for the men who had done this. In some, they found nothing, and in others, they found terrorized victims, too frightened to speak. Finally, a young boy, no more than about 9 or 10, whom they discovered huddled with his mother in the corner of a bedroom, timidly stepped forward and told them he saw the insurgents going into the house of one of the village elders. With some coaxing and despite the pleas of his mother, he agreed to show them the way. He then led them towards the edge of the village and pointed to the house, a traditional mud and timber structure surrounded by a low wall. Reconnaissance and surveillance equipment revealed that there were 8 insurgents holding a man, a woman, and a young girl hostage inside. The SEALs waited for the right moment, and then they stormed the house. The enemy put up a fight, but were no match. Leading the way, Michael found the man and woman cowering by the door, but he didn't see the child. He rushed the couple outside and ran back in with gunfire all around him. He searched, finally spotting the top of the little girl's head behind a stack of pillows on the floor. He snatched her up in his arms and raced out, protecting the child with his body wrapped protectively around her. He sprinted to get her away from the house and the flying bullets. He already made it safely, but one of the insurgents, in a final blaze of glory before collapsing from his own wounds, took aim and fired at Michael's back, hitting him 3 times. The next thing Michael remembered was waking up at the field hospital with his SEAL brothers around him. The first words he uttered were, "Is she okay?" "Thanks to you, yes," his commander assured. "She's with her family." Now, every time images of his last mission returned to haunt him, Michael saw the devastation, the death, and the terror in that little girl's eyes. He had seen enough brutality and its aftermath to last him a lifetime. There was no way he could put an end to all the evil he had witnessed, but maybe the solution, at least for him, was to stop the terrorists before they could execute their plans. After weighing his options, he decided that the counterterrorism division of the FBI would be the best place for him. He realized it would be naive to think he could save the world, but at least he could try to save a small part of it. Isabel pulled him from his thoughts when she said, "Please answer one more question. Did that mission make a difference in anyone's life?" Michael remembered the family he had helped escape. At least they were safe now. "Yes," he answered, "the mission made a difference." He tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear and said, "Okay, it's your turn, Isabel. Tell me about the land you are inheriting in Scotland." "I'm going to sell it. I'm going to get my great uncle Compton McKenna, who amassed quite a fortune. Kate and Kiara and I never met the man. Compton was mean spirited. He disowned my father when he married my mother. He made a video outlining the changes to his will. Like I said, he had amassed a fortune, and his brother's grandsons thought they were going to get it all. Kate and Dylan went to the attorney's office and watched the video Compton made it to go with his will. In it, he defamed our mother. He said horrible things about her. He also said he believed his great nephews were all useless and they didn't deserve to get much of his money. He liked us three girls, he said, because in spite of our mother, who he said was no better than a street beggar, we had all made something of ourselves. Kate and Kiera received the bulk of his estate, close to $100 million. Michael smiled. They didn't keep it, did they? No, they didn't. All the money went to build a new cancer center at the University Hospital complex. It's called the Leah McKenna Cancer Center. That ought to make them that mean old man roll over in his grave. And he gave you Glenn McKenna? Yes, she said. I don't know why. Perhaps the letter he wrote to me will explain his reasons. Compton McKenna was given to drama. Kate brought the DVD home to Compton, spelling out the terms of his will. It was difficult to watch and listen to him slander my mother. He looked down on her because she wasn't born with a title or a high social status. Her family didn't have money and they weren't blue bloods, so Compton deemed her unworthy to join his family. Did Compton have a title? Was he blue blood? He asked. No, he was just a hypocrite. Sounds like it, he agreed. Your mother raised all three of you without any help, didn't she? No, she had help. She went to work at a private school, and when Kiera and Kate became students there, the tuition was free. My aunt Nora moved in to take care of me. She laughed and added, she had quite an influence on me. Sometimes I sound just like her. Michael tilted Isabel's chin up and looked at her with a concerned expression. There's nothing we need to talk about. Oh, there's something we need to talk about. Was he going to bring up her experience in bed? Wouldn't that be great? She wouldn't be feeling so insecure if she hadn't bragged about being such a sex goddess. He had known she was teasing, hadn't he? Of course he had, but her mind still raced to come up with an explanation if he had brought it up. Yes? You said you never want to go on stage again. Relief surged through her. Yes, that's what I said, all right. He seemed puzzled. Did you mean it? Of course I meant it. I wouldn't have said it if I didn't mean it. He took her empty glass and set it on the table next to his drink, then fixed his eyes on hers. So you understand what happened tonight? I was there, Michael. So yes, I know what happened. Isabel? Isabel really didn't have any idea how fantastic she was. You know, sometimes we are great and we don't know it. It's other people who recognize our greatness. And leave it to us, we would stifle our talents under the bushel. It's always other people who have to identify our talent and make effort to bring it to light. Because if left to us, it would come to nothing. Isabel really didn't have any idea how fantastic she was. She had become a superstar tonight, and he was shocked to learn she didn't want it. I'm a songwriter, she said. I'm not a performer. Isabel didn't want to talk about the concert any longer. She knew she would have to figure out what she was going to do, but that could wait until tomorrow. She had other ideas now. She surprised Michael when she kicked the sheet down and turned to straddle his lap. She got up on her knees and kissed him. Then she leaned back. I was thinking I would seduce you. You talk about seduce, Michael. You better go and make that money. The sexy smile in his eyes made her shiver. Yeah? She nodded. And then I'm going to write a song about it. He was totally unprepared for that statement and burst out laughing. Sweetheart, that would be an X-rated song. She trailed her fingertips down the stubble on his cheek. He was such a rugged looking man, And oh, how his scent appealed to her. It reminded her of worn leather. What? It reminded her of worn leather and the woods after the rain, but also it was male. It was so Michael. There was just something about him. When she got near him, every part of her body reacted. Isabel put her arms around his neck. Isabel put her arms around his neck. I'm going for triple X. Those were the last coherent words he spoke for a while. Later, much later, they fell asleep, wrapped in each other's arms. That is the end of chapter 18, my friends. And that is the end of the reading of Grace on the Fire for this morning. I hope you all enjoyed the reading as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. When we come back tomorrow, we will be reading chapter 19 of the book Under Fire. Join me then, won't you, as we read the book Grace Under Fire by the lovely Julie Garwood. Until tomorrow, my friends, this is Trem from Tremesis, where your journey matters. Have yourselves a great day, everybody. I'll see you all later.